Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. First off, a big thank you for taking out the time to join today's webinar between Locate Global and Ground Control. Appreciate you all have extremely busy lives and things to get on with. So we'll be keeping today's session fairly short, around 20 minutes or so. Plus, we'll leave some additional time at the end to answer any sort of questions that you may have. So without further ado, let's jump right in with some quick fire introductions. So I'm Raphael Polt, Head of Global Partnerships at Locate Global. So we are a incident and crisis management platform used by some of the world's top brands and industries in order to help keep organizations and most importantly, their people safe. Also joining me today is Evan Fenimore. So Evan is the client solution specialist at Ground Control. So Ground Control specialize in connecting people and assets, predominantly in remote or hard to reach locations through their satellite and cellular technology. So a real warm welcome to all of you today, wherever you're dialed in from. And we really hope that you manage to get some, really sort of great value out of today's session. So what is the theme of today's webinar? What are we looking to address? So we'll be exploring the importance of critical connectivity and how organizations of any size really can look to enhance lone worker safety. And in particular, we'll be looking at solutions that go beyond your kind of traditional cellular coverage. So the plan is for you to leave this session with some best practices and also some actionable insights that you can really take away with you and hopefully prepare and respond to these types of challenges more effectively. So moving on to the first slide, at its core, at its very essence, we genuinely believe that every business has a fundamental responsibility, which is ensuring that its people feel safe at all times, no matter where they are. So I think personally, just from being in the industry for quite some time, the term duty of care has been sort of brandished and thrown around quite loosely over the years, often just reduced to having the right procedures and documentation in place. However, in reality, real duty of care goes much deeper than this. It's about creating tangible work environments, tangible cultures where people feel safe, trust in the organization's ability to protect them, and ultimately see these values embedded into the everyday sort of fabric and everyday operations of the business. And that's because at the heart of every organization are its people, right? They're the ones that drive productivity, they're the ones sparking innovation, and ultimately, they're the ones determining the success of the organization. But that being said, while people are the company's greatest asset, they can also be, the organization's greatest risk. And unfortunately, when we look at the numbers, the reality becomes clear. So every year, around 2.8 million workplace injuries occur. So again, really highlighting sort of the real risks employees face just by pitching up or turning up to work. Even more concerning, 50% of these injuries are actually preventable. Imagine that, right? So again, this just tells us that there's some real serious gaps when it comes to workplace training, when it comes to compliance, and when it also comes to sort of building strong and tangible safety cultures. And the impact isn't just physical, it's also operational too. So on average, businesses lose approximately around 8 working days per injury. Again, affecting efficiency, straining resources, and also, driving up costs for the business. But it doesn't stop there. The impact extends far beyond individual incidences. So workers spend on average of around 100 minutes per day in potentially hazardous conditions. More than 5,000 workplace fatalities occur every year, which is around 15% of all occupational deaths, which again, in my mind, is just a sobering reminder of why safety needs to be top of every organization's priority. And then there's the financial toll, right? So approximately 150 billion is lost annually due to injuries and fatalities in the workplace. So once you start to sort of factor in all of the medical costs, lost productivity and legal liabilities, it definitely all adds up. So as you can see, these numbers really truly do speak for themselves, and I think highlights one simple truth, and that truth is that when safety is compromised, unfortunately, everyone pays a price. So with that in mind, I'm going to hand you over to Evan, who's going to share a bit more data on how this plays out across different industries and verticals. Cheers, Evan.
Thanks, Raphael. Hi, everyone. So what we did here at Ground Control is we reached out to a variety of lone workers all over North America, a very well-connected, well-established and infrastructure country or region. And of the 250 lone workers that we reached out to across a variety of industries, 52% of those surveyed said that they often traveled outside of cell phone coverage. And as we all know, cell phone coverage is paramount for being able to stay in communication with family, friends, and obviously your operational base. And for 52% of those to travel outside of that that coverage is quite a large amount of people. Not just that, but people working in very hazardous jobs are outside of contact and outside of cellular range. So things like, forestry, mining, and utilities, people going to hazardous environments, doing difficult jobs, dangerous jobs, they find themselves, without a means of communication. Not only did we ask these lone workers how they found this, but we also asked their operational teams themselves and the people back at base, who are responsible for these guys out in the field. These guys, 49% did say they had a means of messaging their team out and about in some form, some way. And only 32% of those had a way of knowing where they were, seeing them on a screen. And this is quite interesting to look at because these guys have a responsibility to know where they are, what they're doing, and if they're safe. If their lone workers haven't checked in, something goes wrong, they need to reach out to them, and they're outside of cellular coverage, they might not be able to see where they are, where they've been. They might have been in point A an hour ago, and an incident happened at point B 200 kilometers down the road a couple of hours later. You just don't know. So seeing where they are, knowing what they're doing, being able to ask them what they're doing is really, really important. And the vast majority of the people that we asked, they didn't have a way of knowing where they were. In addition to this, back to the lone workers and specifically, when asked, 63% said they needed to contact someone, but they couldn't because they were outside of coverage or because cell phone coverage was spotty. You've all been there, you've all looked at your phone and it said you've got a bar of connectivity and you're trying to send a message, you're trying to call someone and it just won't connect. And it's just because cell coverage, it's not fantastic sometimes. There could be contention on the network. A cell tower could be down without you realizing, and it just will not work. So for 63% to say, they needed to contact someone, but they couldn't, it's quite a terrifying number. And additionally, 44% said because of that, they felt unsafe. And they felt, doing their job, not being able to communicate with someone, put them into a sticky situation, and they felt like they were in jeopardy to some degree. 19% had an accident and couldn't get help. And that is what leads to, in some cases, fatalities or severe injuries or life-changing injuries and things like that. 14% of those surveyed said there was no problem and none of the above applied to them. And that's a really small number out of quite a small subset as well. So 250 people tracked, or surveyed, 19% said none of this applied to them. So it's quite a scary amount of people who find themselves outside of cell coverage and needing help and can't get it.
100%, and that's really interesting, Evan. I think based on these numbers and some of the challenges that kind of you've addressed, I think it's actually worth thinking about some of the costs of when things do go wrong, and the unexpected happens, right? And first there's that kind of human cost, that human element, which is obviously the most sort of serious of all consequences. When there's sort of severe risk or even loss of life, which plain and sort of simple, should never happen in a work environment. And organizations must do everything in their control and in their power to prevent this, as consequences can obviously be extremely devastating. Then there's obviously the ripples effect on productivity, on retention, and on sort of the kind of overall the general workplace culture. So when employees don't feel safe, productivity takes a hit, operations slow down, and ultimately companies find themselves reacting to issues instead of preventing them and focusing on what actually moves the needle forward. Which in turn also leads to things like high turnover, low morale, and a toxic workplace culture. And then finally, you have the bigger picture, right? The kind of legal and the reputational risks that come with that. Failing to meet safety regulations isn't only just something that exposes people or concerns stakeholders, but it's also exposing the business as a whole. So and with that, there are also some extremely, severe and serious consequences. Anything from kind of costly lawsuits to hefty fines, and also, I think a lot of organizations don't really think about it, but also the damage to their organization's reputation, which can be very, very difficult to recover from. Next slide, please. So what measures can organizations put in place, and how can we face the problems and tackle these head on, right? So I think the truth is that there isn't really a sort of a magical or a magic formula or a one size fit all solution. However, when it comes to the modern day technology, it's crucial to find an approach that not only meets the needs of your business today, but also aligns with your organization as your risk appetite evolves over time. Next slide, please. So that said, that there are a few things to consider when choosing the right solution. Firstly, we'd highly recommend having a centralized system, or at least a central hub where you can manage your sort of entire teams and sort of operations in one place. So whether it's real-time visibility, alert handling, or the ability to send sort of mass communications, having everything under one roof can make a massive difference, especially if you have workforce or individuals spread across different locations or constantly on the move. It's also worth sort of bearing in mind your current processes and systems. So any solution should really have the ability to integrate with your current processes. So worth pointing out also that the goal isn't really to replace what you already have, but rather to enhance and optimize, right? So whether that means integrating with communication platforms or incumbent physical security systems, the objective here is really to look at how you can improve the holistic and overall process, while also future-proofing your organization as your business scales and grows moving forward. The ability to also extract data, in a sort of easy to digest format is also critical. So again, helping you to fine tune your sort of safety strategies, and also anticipate any sort of potential issues before they arise. And last but not least, smart devices and IoT. So from my own experience and working with a plethora of organizations around the world, this really opens a world of opportunities, particularly for workers in remote or high risk environments where having sort of instant, reliable line of communication makes all of the difference. So in these situations, think emergency responders, think lone workers or employees in areas with limited connectivity. So just to recap then, some of the most common scenarios where we've seen sort of challenges arise, and how implementing the right solution can help businesses minimize risk. So firstly, when keeping sort of lone workers safe, whether it's employees working in sort of remote locations or operating alone, being able to create emergency alerts or having a man down functionality of sorts really kind of provides that additional layer of protection. Also having that ability to identify hazards like slips, trips, falls can also make a huge difference in preventing sort of incidences before they arise. Also for sort of security operations and security teams. So for example, if you have teams on the move, features like real-time tracking and operational awareness become, essential parts of your tasks, and also helps to kind of ensure visibility over travel movements, which in turn, helps to kind of safeguard both your security teams and also the people that you're protecting. Healthcare professionals is also a big one. So here we're talking about nurses and caregivers, often working from, or working alone, or working from very sort of, precarious, working in precarious environments, whether that's visiting patients or, again, working in sort of unpredictable locations. And then lastly, sort of improving evacuation support. So predominantly in crisis situations, the ability to be able to disseminate clear communication and view all of the information in real time is, critically important, especially when you're looking to sort of help with the coordination and safety of stakeholders when things hit the fan, essentially. So as you can imagine, there are countless applications for this technology, but of course, that also means that there are some limitations that come with it, and Evan will be perfectly placed to sort of dive deeper into that.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's the solution? At the moment, the latest buzzword is D2D, or direct to device. And this is effectively a technology where you're placing a cell tower in space, right? And this is enabling satellite communications using your cell phone, using a smartphone of some description. There's two key ways of doing this. One of them is to add chipsets to phones themselves so that they can work directly with the satellites. But that is a very niche thing. That's only being done currently between Apple and Globalstar, the Globalstar satellite constellation, where they're putting a chipset that only works with the Globalstar network. This is great because Globalstar has an established satellite constellation. They've got licensed spectrum, and so it'll work wherever they have coverage. The second option is to alter the satellites themselves to work with any phone. This is the method that Starlink, Link, and AST Space Mobile are doing at the moment. This is great. This is a fantastic technology, and it's going to be awesome in the coming years. But at the moment, it's in its infancy. Doing this method, altering the satellites themselves, that means they've got to launch new satellites. This takes a lot of time. At the moment, Starlink, for example, they have an agreement in only 10 countries. So they've licensed this technology in 10 countries. And even in those 10 countries, if you're lucky enough to have a phone that's doing this kind of stuff, then response times can still take 10 minutes for you to get a message out in an incident. So you can use your cell phone, you can text someone over the satellite network, and it will still take 10 plus minutes maybe to get a response, or to at least get that delivered to the end person. It's a really cool technology, but it is incredibly dependent on your cell phone itself. And that in itself brings its own challenges. Cell phones, everyone's got one. Everyone loves them. They're fantastic. And everyone knows that if you use it too much, it can deplete its battery really, really quickly. When you're communicating with satellites, or in fact, I'll start with cell towers, that's local, it's terrestrial, it's not far, it's just on the horizon. There's multiple all around you. So the information you're trying to communicate or transmit isn't going very far. As soon as you're dealing with low Earth orbit satellites, you've got a lot more transmission power required to get that out over the network. So it's going to drain your battery a lot more. And that can affect, apps on your phone, other things you're running in the background, and in general will deplete your battery a lot quicker. Similarly, the devices you're using don't operate well in cold or in high temperatures. All cell phones use lithium-ion batteries and other batteries like that. They all deplete much quicker in cold environments. And I've dropped my phone more than once, and I have shattered the screen in a weird place, and it's just meant I can never use that section of the screen ever again until I got it replaced. So they're really vulnerable, really easy to break, and they're just not made for emergency situations. They're used for day-to-day communications and, browsing social media and researching things and calling people. It's, just basic stuff, not emergency situation, life or death, must use my phone quickly. They're not optimized for things like gloves or anything like that. So this is fantastic when it becomes a mature, reliable product, but as it stands now and for the foreseeable, it still is very dependent on cell phones, and it has a lot of its drawbacks. So what does that mean? What works in these lone worker remote situations? An example, and there are many out there, but a solid example is a product that we produce called the RockSTAR, for example. It's a ruggedized, long life battery device purely working on satellite communications. So established Iridium constellation network, 66 low Earth orbit satellites, 100% coverage around the globe. And there is not a single dark spot. If you can see the sky, it will be able to transmit both its position as well as any text or emailing communications that you require. Like I say, it's incredibly rugged. This was designed for use within military and security applications originally, as well as around the world yacht tracking. So it can withstand incredibly harsh environments and being abused by, heavy-handed operators in interesting environments. We've rated it down to -40 Celsius and +60 Celsius, so it can handle extreme heat and low cold. And it's incredibly quick. So it's less than 10 seconds to get messages out and delivered to their destination. It also has a dedicated emergency button. Cell phones do not. You've got to fumble through various apps and settings and menus to find, an emergency feature on a cell phone. But this, as you can see, has a nice bright red button that you push it, and it will escalate to the appropriate methods and authorities if necessary. So it's a really good dedicated satellite communications device on an established network that's working now and has been for many, many years and will work for many years to come. Next slide, please. So when you pair this with Locate Global's infrastructure, their software, their systems, what do you have? We pass the data from the RockSTAR directly into Locate Global's platform, where you can visualize all your teams in real time from the satellite network. So these RockSTARs are transmitting positions, transmitting messages, and through that combination, through APIs, Locate Global can manage your teams. They can present everything on one screen, so you know where people are, what they're doing, their ETAs, are they in danger, what's going on. You can do proper risk management in real time anywhere on Earth through a two-way capable messaging device. It's really, really, really advanced and feature-rich, both platform and device, and they work seamlessly together as well. And it's just the best way to ensure your team safety at the moment. As more technology comes into the forefront, as it develops, as it gets better, the best way that we've found now is to use tried and true technology, and then adapt and overcome as these technologies come to market, and work those into our products and make sure that they work best for everyone as well. And that's what we wanted to talk to you about, really. That was just a brief overview of the situation that we see ourselves in, that we see lone workers in, and the evolving world of cellular technology as well as satellite technology, and how it's becoming more and more important. So yeah, at this point, I don't think I see any questions that have been added into the webinar at all. If you have any, please do. If you see the box, please shove some in there now, and Raphael and I can take some time to answer them. But if you don't, by all means, reach out to us separately, and we can come back to you personally and answer any questions you have through the information on the screen. But we'll also share this webinar as well to yourselves and anyone else who couldn't make it today, so you can rewatch, re-listen, and try and digest a bit what was said. Raphael, do you have anything to add, my friend?
No, not at all. I think you nailed it on the head there, Evan. So yeah, look, any questions that you may have with regards to any of the topics or information which we sort of spoke about today, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Evan directly. And again, if you have any specific questions, we would love to answer those in more detail, and take it from there. So I guess the last sort of bit for me is, thank you very much for attending today's short but hopefully concise webinar. And yeah, hopefully we'll be in touch with you soon.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it.
Cheers, guys. Thank you very much. All the best.